I take the threat of terrorism seriously, and I think we all do. And I think it's really disingenuous for the government to invoke and sort of scandalize our memories, to sort of exploit the national trauma that we all suffered together and worked so hard to come through, to justify programs that have never been shown to keep us safe, but cost us liberties and freedoms that we don't need to give up, and our Constitution says we should not give up.
But you can see how it happened. Guys with box cutters spent $200 using our own aviation system to take down our own buildings and smash into the Pentagon in a field in Pennsylvania. What are we going to do? It's a
New York. Gary Sick, currently director of the Middle East Institute at the world-famous Columbia University here in New York, former National Security Council member under Presidents Ford, Reagan, and Carter. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Sick.
Pleasure.
What type of planning went into this attack?
I think this is really a key issue because if you simply stop and think about the magnitude of this operation, they were able to penetrate security in 2 major airports, get people on board, provide their own pilots, because they obviously had their own pilots to do.
Suicide pilots.
Suicide pilots, but pilots who were qualified to fly. No commercial pilot would ever have done that. And you stop and think about the amount of time, back it up, how much time would have been required, and the money and the organization. Let's put it this way. What if you're the president in the Cold War days and you tell the CIA that you'd like to create a little operation in Russia, which would basically hijack 4 airplanes and within a period of an hour crash them into major sites in the Soviet Union, and you had to organize that. It would have stretched our capabilities absolutely to the limit, and yet that's what happened here today.
We was trained to follow the dollar, look for the money. Yeah. Who finances an operation like this took a lot of money.
It took money and it took professionalism. I personally think that this had to have had a professional organization behind it. If you look at the kind of operations that Osama bin Laden and others have conducted in the past, the most sophisticated stuff they've been able to manage is a car bomb. And car bombs are dangerous and they're deadly, but they aren't like what we saw today. And this business of organizing, they had to recruit in the United States. They had to have Americans. They had to have some way of passing through the security in this country. That meant money, but it meant tremendous organization. And the fact that all of this, if you stop and think about it, it's amazing, went unreported, unnoticed by any of our systems, which were watching all of these specific organizations. Speculating about Osama bin Laden, maybe so. But if so, he has moved his operations to a level that this
structure is collapsing. This was the result of something that was planned. This is not, it's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way. How they accomplished this, we don't know.
Hand grenades and
but clearly this is what they wanted to accomplish.
Look-alike bombs, etc. Or they might have indeed had help from the inside, but either way, our security just simply doesn't cover this on domestic flights.
Daniel Garay, you've got at least an outline of how this took place. Pretty darn complicated and a sophisticated operation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely sophisticated with respect to timing, targets, kind of operation, thinking about the weapon systems, the way then that they apparently took over each of these airplanes. I suspect that there may have been, training, if you will, in some fashion done, even for that part of the operation. This is not something you just pull off one day. That suggests a lot of time.
USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center. Here's ABC's Brian Ross.
President Bush has said again and again that no one could have imagined what Osama bin Laden ordered for September 11th.
We knew he hated us, but there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
The surface of that, the answer to your question is yes. We have considered that. This is not a new idea, and we have.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military planners did envision and practice those very scenarios. As reported by USA Today, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, conducted exercises with fighter jets, simulating hijacked planes flown into the World Trade Center in the 2 years before the attacks.
There are a lot of good people throughout.
There are at least some people who are questioning whether something that is this complicated, this sophisticated, could have been pulled off without some kind of state support. Do you think it could have?
I would doubt it, quite honestly. When you look at all the operation, this was timed as meticulously just about as any military operation, as anything the U.S. Air Force does in operations in wartime. So I would suspect if you're going to have trained personnel who have flight simulators or other mechanical means that they can practice on to fly these aircraft, there's got to be some level of
and northern Alaska in a mock Cold War hijack exercise. There was another drill, Vigilant Guardian, which was a hijack exercise, a command post exercise, but it involved the insertion of false radar blips onto radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Sector. In addition...
Hi, Boston Center, Team U. We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. We need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise manifest.
Now, 2001 Pentagon email, Air Force officials wanted a war game, having a terrorist group hijack a commercial airline and fly it into the Pentagon. The email was obtained by the nonprofit group Project for Government Order.
As part of this renovation, it was Dr. Malacher and his fellow engineers in Vicksburg that had helped design the Pentagon's protection against terrorist attack. By sheer coincidence, the terrorists on 9/11 had managed to strike the only part of the Pentagon that had already been retrofitted.
All calling upon President Bush to release the 28 pages.
Al-Qaeda still exists. Al-Qaeda is dangerous. Al-Qaeda hates us. And
let me say, while the 28 pages are maybe the most important and the most prominent, they are by no means the only example of where information that is important to understanding the full extent of 9/11 have also been withheld from the American people. The second issue is the issue of justice. Some 3,000 members of the families who were lost on 9/11 have been trying for years to get justice through our system for the losses that they have suffered. The position of the United States government has been to protect Saudi Arabia at virtually every step of the
to the 9/11 hijackers. The Saudi government is being sued by some 9/11 families, and recent court papers filed on the Saudis' behalf stress that the 9/11 Commission in 2004 found no evidence that the Saudi government as an institution or senior Saudi officials individually funded either al-Qaeda or the hijackers. Zakaria Moussaoui is making new allegations and reviving old accusations against a handful of Saudi royals. Moussaoui is reviving old claims he made a dozen years ago that a specific Saudi prince and princess and others were involved in financing 9/11.
That it was a problem.
In his letter, Moussaoui claims that the same time he was taking flying lessons in Norman, Oklahoma, he met both the prince and the princess, who, quote, gave me money, unquote, with other funds directed to the 9/11 hijackers. The Saudi government is...
Michael Springman is here at D.C. Bureau to share his employment experience at the State Department from 1987 to 1989. Springman issued visas in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
I had been part of a program to issue visas under questionable circumstances to a variety of people who had no ties either to their own country or to Saudi Arabia. It was really a program to recruit and train terrorists to come to the United States for training and then be sent back to Afghanistan for use in the war against the then Soviet Union. And part of the mix was Osama bin Laden, who was then working for the CIA as an asset to recruit people from all over the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia.
I had been assigned to the Consulate General at Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I had thought it was a State Department post,
until I got there. And I learned that of some 20 Americans there were only 3 people, including myself, who worked for the Department of State. There might have been a couple of more, but there were only 3 people whom I knew for certainty who was not tied to the CIA or to the National Security Agency. Years ago, we had 15 of the 19 hijackers get visas from the CIA's consulate at Jeddah. They didn't get them from London or Frankfurt or Cairo. They got them from Jeddah. They didn't get them from Dhahran in the eastern province. They didn't get them from Riyadh, the capital of the country. They got them from the American Consulate General in Jeddah. And I thought that was very peculiar. Government agency. They said, it's very simple. The CIA and its asset Osama bin Laden were recruiting terrorists for the Afghan war. They were sending them to the United States for training, for rewards, for whatever purpose, and then sending them on to Afghanistan. Saudis, people with Saudi passports, didn't have to appear in front of a consular officer. Their personal appearances were waived. It's a good way to get people past the visa officer who asks awkward questions like I did.
Its goal, a formal investigation.
An investigation must not interfere with the ongoing efforts to prevent the next attack.
Today, creating an independent commission to investigate the September 11th attack on America.
Buckling under pressure, the White House was finally agreeing to a deal. But in a stunning series of revelations, it soon appeared that the White House was stacking the odds against an investigation it had not wanted in the first place.
The president named a supporter, Dr. Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State in the Nixon and Ford administrations, to head the panel.
Have any Saudi American clients that you would like to tell us about? And he was very uncomfortable, kind of twisting and turning on the couch. And then she asked whether he had any clients by the name of bin Laden. And he just about fell off his couch.
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger stepped down from the position Friday.
We thought the meeting went well.
Why are you and the Vice President insisting on appearing together before the 9/11 Commission?
Because the 9/11 Commission wants to ask us questions. That's why we're meeting, and I look forward to meeting with them and answering their
occurred, that this information was available is something that I think should have been made available to the rest of the country.
Senator, you told us earlier this year that Vice President Cheney called you and asked you not to hold wide-ranging hearings and to limit the investigation to the Intelligence Committee. Looking back, why do you think he made that call? Do you think that he knew that the White House did know something and that they were trying to keep the investigation limited because they didn't want to look culpable at all?
Well, I'm not going to come to any conclusions. It is true that the Vice President has requested on several occasions that we not have an investigation into this issue, and
prior information. And I also just want you to clarify Cheney's statement, no investigation whatsoever, not merely a private investigation. I had thought earlier that he wanted to make sure this was kept, a private intelligence committee investigation.
Well, the impression that the Vice President left with me is that he would prefer no investigation. And then when we pursued the matter, I told him that we had no choice but to move forward with the Intelligence Committee investigation as is now occurring.
Lab tests confirmed that refined Ames strain anthrax had been packed inside both letters.
Americans should not be scared.
Anthrax is not contagious.
Government and health officials tried to ease the nation's fear, but there was no way of knowing the extent of the risk. Then, on the 15th of October, the bioterror attack arrived at the nation's capital, when an envelope was received at the office of Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. It looked like the letter had been sent by some school pupils, but as one of Daschle's aides ripped it open, a cloud of white powder burst into the air.
Thinking that what we're dealing with here is an inside job with a real insider who has